Good morning, America. Thank you for watching Taxes Made Easy. Here, we're going to focus on today um, on passport revocation. So, this is something that affects a lot of people that are in the middle of travel, not sure what's going on with their tax debt, and you can either have your passport suspended or revoked altogether. So, we're going to really take a deep dive into this and see how does this happen, how to prevent it, and once it happens, what kind of time frame do you need to look at to get this taken care of? So again, very we've seen this a lot. We have someone just came in, I believe, late last week that needed this very issue addressed. So that's what um, we're going to cover in detail today. So stay tuned, and we'll be right back after this break. Welcome back, everybody. And we've got a lot of information to cover. Just going to dive right in. And first article here, we're going to covers from the IRS, just some basic news and more disaster relief for victims of flooding in Juneau area of Alaska. So again, if you are in this area, this is the city and borough of Juneau in Alaska. You now have a deadline pushed out to May 1st, 2025. And again, it just lists out the different tax returns that and filing deadlines and payment deadlines that are getting pushed out. Doesn't mean um, it does mean that when these deadlines come, be very aware that you have to meet these deadlines when they come up. And we've got some more coming up in November for people that have extended deadlines. So if you're one of these areas, make sure you put on your calendar, you're paying attention to this, but also do everything you can to preserve your records so that way when the time comes, you are ready. So just going to do a quick share here. Another IRS notice put out over the weekend. Um, IRS issues final regulations for advanced manufacturing production credit. Now, if that sounds complicated, it is. But just want to mention it. So this is for companies producing eligible components, including solar wind energy, inverters, battery components, and 50 different critical minerals used for EV production. So this is all going back to the Inflation Reduction Act. If you work or know anybody that works in those areas, make sure that they're aware of these credits so you can take advantage of it. But you have to apply. If you don't qualify, you're just asking for tax problems if you're claiming credits for which you don't qualify for. Um, Another quick little article here from Yahoo Finance. We've been watching the mortgage rates, and 30-year fixed mortgage rate rose again to 6.54%. So mortgages went down by a point. Now they're up half a point. They crept up, another point, 10% of a point in just the last few days. It's fourth straight week of increasing mortgage rates. So again, suggested there's still plenty of demand out there, plenty of people that want to purchase homes and just can't get into it. So a year ago the rate was 7.79%, so it's still down quite a bit. But that's why if you're trying to time getting to a house to the best interest rate, it's very difficult to do. So again, it's be aware it could continue to go up in the short term. We're not sure what's going to happen long term, of course. So next article, again about Boeing. Boeing is still in the news. They resolved their strike. Thank goodness. We had a few big strikes that could have done a lot of damage to the economy. But here, the short strike, relatively short strike Boeing had, they're still going to raise $19 billion because they're still hemorrhaging cash. And how are they going to do that? By more stock offerings. So Boeing is now low. If you think they're going to turn around, it might be a great time to invest with this new stock offering being offered at a premium. The question is it going to turn itself around? It's got to really fighting against the tie here. So wish the best for Boeing, and we'll see how that works out. So this is another interesting economic article. I'm just kind of trying to fly through these. Um, Big tech earnings, though. This is interesting. So you have Alphabet, Meta, Microsoft, Apple, Amazon, all delivering solid earnings, being very consistent and really hitting the top points for people. And these are considered the Magnificent Seven group. They account for roughly one third of the S&P 500's index's market capitalization. So again, a huge part of the S&P 500, just seven companies. Um, and so they're closely following the financial results, which are coming out. But why? Because for 5 years, or for years, all five companies have delivered very solidly, beating projections. Um, Apple had a 4.48% positive earnings surprise last quarter, and Amazon beat their estimates by 17.1%. So why is this? Kind of explains it here. At the same time, companies in the group have strong advantages, refers to as moats or protections around their business to protect them from competition, which is why Europe is going after them. It's why the federal government has been going after them, but to a much lesser amount. So this is called monopoly. So Microsoft Windows is a 73% market share in the global operating system. How do you get around Windows? You have to really be doing something unique. And this is shared globally, not the United States. Excuse me. They have strong economic networks that lock in relations to users, make it almost impossible to break into that space. Um, you have Apple's brand name. Again, very similar thing. If you're using Apple products, you have to use their system and their Microsoft browser. All that all goes hand in hand. So you have Microsoft on one hand, Apple on the other, two major players, and anybody else is pretty much either a fringe thing, like or not very well known. So I know of one, but I can't even think of it right now. Meta, Facebook, Alphabet, which dominates the search engine industry, Google, YouTube, and Amazon all play a part in this. And having these market positions, dominant market positions, have enabled them to deliver consistent gains. But the question is this good for American consumers? Um, so moving on, that's a different news, and it's something that the Biden administration has gone after to some extent. Um, I don't know what the Trump administration or possible Trump administration would do when it comes to these market monopolies. Um, there have been a lot of issues with these as far as censorship, shutting down competition, etc. So we'll see what happens. Um, Jumping to this next tab, this is something I've been seeing for a while. And this is from Red State. Um, but it's not just swing states. I think people across the country are hurting. The economy is not doing the best. And one of the ways you tell this is record number of people going to food banks. I have a son that volunteers at a local food bank, and he shares the same sentiment. They're seeing more people than ever. They typically run out of food, whereas that wasn't the process beforehand, or what would typically happen beforehand. So if you're not involved with the local food bank, I recommend you do that. Make sure people around you know that there are options. Um, Being unable to purchase food is a very scary position to be in. And too often we have people around us that are in that position. We don't even know it. So there's food banks. There's other ways to purchase food um, very cheaply and or get it for free. So a lot of help needed at food banks across the country. And article just kind of goes into how high inflation rates and increases at grocery stores have really hurt people. Lately, it's just in the last week or so, I've actually seen some more deals that I haven't seen in probably 6 to 9 months at the grocery store. So fingers crossed that some deals are coming back. Part of that, I guess, there was a huge culling of chicken, which affected chicken prices as well as eggs. But I'm seeing egg prices actually start to drop, not back to previous prices, but around $2 a dozen. If you shop around, you can find those. If you just walk in and buy normal eggs, they're still $5 to $6 a dozen, which yikers. But again, this is affecting people all across the country. So, big thing in the news, and this is um, yesterday, former President Trump gave a huge speech at Madison Square Garden. It was filled to capacity, had 20,000, had 75,000 people outside of it. But I just want to touch on the highlight, and this is interesting. Most of the other highlights they're more political nature. Tax credit for family caregivers, and the very interesting part. I'm going to jump down here. This is something Harris proposed through Medicare to cover home care services for seniors. That can be very huge. People struggling to provide for family members. It's expensive. And again, that's a great way to reduce the healthcare costs, is be making sure that people have someone that can take care of them in their own home so they're not in and out of the hospital or in the hospital, especially when they're on hospice care. Um, so they propose expanding Medicare, and then Trump comes out with this announcement. So who's copying who? Harris copied Trump when it came to the no reduced taxes on tips or no taxes on tips, but now it looks like Trump's copying Harris. Um, this is a tax credit, so we're going about it a little different way for family caregivers who take care of a parent or loved one. And again, this is something that I think is supported, but this is another tax credit, another giveaway. This is more money out of the federal government, when I'm more interested in how are we going to pay for it? How are we going to cut spending and actually get on a fiscally sane path for our government? Most of the other things, call they're have nothing to do with the economy, and it's mostly just politics. So I wasn't going to focus on that. So we are coming up on a break, and this next article is we're going to get more into overall broader topics, what's happening in the economy, and in taxes as across the country. So we will be right back in just a couple minutes here and dive right into these issues. High vacancy rates where you have a lot of they're just not full. More and more people are working remotely than ever before, and so it really is affecting their bottom line. So David McCarthy with the Commercial Real Estate Finance Council says the biggest thing is do no harm. So don't rock the boat. Real estate is not super liquid, and raising costs now would come at the worst possible time. So what costs are they talking about? They want them to preserve pass-through deductions, like-kind exchanges, and low capital gains taxes. Well, who's pushing for lower capital gains taxes? Trump is. And again, this is all about the 2017 tax cuts set to expire next year. Now, it's interesting here that overall, Kamala Harris has drastically outraised Donald Trump. And the question is, where is she getting that money from? But also, in this industry, the numbers are flipped. So you have 235 million donations to Trump, 117 to Harris. Why? Because she's pushing for a lot of things, higher capital gains, et cetera, that would really hurt commercial realty. Now, do we have too many? Do we need an adjustment? That's something. But whenever you have big changes like that, it really does hurt people down the road and down the line, and it can really hurt downtown businesses and downtown centers. We see a lot of issues already with downtown areas, the hearts of cities. So it talks about some of the mega donors for Harris, some of the donors for Trump. And again, one of the big issues is that it's going to face a $1 trillion wall of debt, a surge in office sector delinquencies because and mainly record high office vacancies in urban centers. More and more people working remotely, or a lot of businesses are struggling and failing. And then, so again, they've had operating costs going up. And this is why the industry is saying we really can't afford to have costs go through the roof and taxes go up. Again, capital taxes being a huge concern because it directly impacts these kinds of investments. So interesting enough, we're going to go right to the opposite perspective. So this is from Bloomberg Tax. So you have Reuters on one side, Bloomberg on the other, but it depends who you're talking to. So this is more of an opinion piece. And to be fair, this is coming from a very leftist perspective. But I think it's interesting to look at both sides of every picture here and that issue. So he's talking about the battle over the expiring 2017 Trump tax provisions. So his main point is that, look, we can't afford, it's cost us so much money to have these tax cuts in place. Ironically, I have a hard time buying that decision or argument because revenues are up. Revenues are up higher than ever. The question is, it's spending that continues to outpace revenues. So if you have more income than ever, but then you're spending more than ever, that's just a recipe for disaster. But he argues forcefully that, look, we would have a lot more revenue. The deficit would be lower if we didn't have the Trump tax cuts, and even going before that, the Bush tax cuts. So, and he's saying we should need to raise more revenue to finance cut extensions or renew investments. So, how do you raise more revenue? Increase taxes on the wealthy. And he's arguing that getting rid of these tax cuts, the special deductions, the state tax cuts, which you've talked about, would have an impact of 1.6 trillion over 10 years, so about 160 billion a year. And he goes in to talk about the top 1% got large tax breaks. He argues that it mainly favored the wealthy. I mean, these are arguments that we've seen time and time again. And so he talks about how even the tax cuts in 2001 and 2003 really hurt, were more expensive than the Trump cuts. So again, at that time, revenue stood at roughly 20% of gross domestic product. Now it's roughly 17%. But he talks about these numbers, but what he doesn't talk about is, did the total revenue go up or not? Typically, when you have tax cuts, production jumps and you get more money. So when you're talking about it, it's just how you slice it. It's all a statistics game. If you're getting more money, I'm not sure what he's complaining about. But what does he want to do with this? Make new investments. He doesn't want to, again, they don't want to raise taxes on people making less than $400,000. That's going to happen. I'm sorry. There's so many different things in it being passed on. And what do corporations do when their taxes go up? They pass it on. So again, he wants to invest in people, communities, and building blocks of the economy that ways that to counter ways that limit opportunity, widen inequality, and worsen racial and ethnic inequities. So a lot of DEI, the expansion of the child tax credit, And both parties are looking to add to this, but again, this is more spending, investing in workers. Um, and so you really have both sides of the issue. And that's what I'm trying to present here is um, you have industry and businesses hurting on one hand, and but again, maybe we do need a huge adjustment. Maybe there is too much office space out there, um, but doing through taxation can be very counterproductive and really hurt businesses that rely heavily on that tax base from businesses. San Francisco is a prime example, losing so many businesses, it's really hurting their bottom line, and they're having to compensate by raising taxes on people, individual taxes. So again, in the end, when you hurt businesses, eventually you hurt the people in that area anyway. So really that kind of outlines the question, where are we going to go in this election? Again, I'm really concerned about the larger picture. I don't think either candidate is really addressing spending and how to address it. So we'll see what happens. Might not matter who gets elected if they're not serious about cutting spending. We might end up just raising taxes through the roof anyway, and some severe austerity measures, which has happened to other countries, much smaller than us. But again, just because we're larger does not exempt us from the rules of economics. So I want to switch gears to our main topic of the day, um, revocations or denial of passports. So again, a lot of this information and can be found on irs.gov. Now we're going to go through this and kind of talk through what makes sense here, what doesn't. But overall, don't hesitate to go to irs.gov directly to the source. Is it something you can always rely on? No. The IRS has even argued that legally, when people take legal positions based on their publications, what's on their website, it is not legal documents, so it's not something that can be used against them in a court of law, which makes your head hurt. Um, but again, that is their position. That's what the courts have agreed with. So, key thing here, and just want to preface this: if you owe tax debt and you travel overseas, your passport is important to you. Don't wait. Don't delay. I just had a case, and I mentioned, this is kind of what triggered this topic to dive into this more, to take a deeper dive into this. They wanted to travel a week from hiring us. We're good, but that would be a bit of a miracle to get the IRS to act within a week. We got the power of attorneys, and we made a call, and made the first call to see what was going on. Normally, they should be able to send us the transcripts. We should be able to look and see exactly what's going on with the passport revocation. The gal that gave me all the information went over the entire case, said, "Oh, that's beyond her pay grade. She couldn't handle it. She would have to transfer me." And when she did, it was over an hour wait, and I had other appointments that I had to get to, so I wasn't able to sit on hold for an hour when I should have been able to get the information right there. The IRS is getting harder than ever to get information, good information from. But once the power of attorney processes, then we can get all that information ourselves. However, that takes 2 weeks, roughly, for the IRS to process that power of attorney. Go figure. As a result of that, it takes longer to get that taken care of. So I'm just going to go through this article. I think it's really good. It has a lot of good information, but don't expect to turn around on a dime on this. If you do have passport issues, you have travel plans, and you do have IRS tax debt, sooner is always better. Get ahead of this. And so, first thing here is, what is a serious delinquent tax debt? So they have a threshold here of $62,000. If you, and adjusted yearly for inflation, but if you owe 62,000 or more, your passport can be suspended or revoked. So again, this isn't just income taxes. This is TFRP penalties, business taxes for people that are personally liable, and other civil penalties. So total balance in most cases. Now, what isn't certified to State Department? I get this question all the time. So these do not suspend your passport. Child support owed, even if it's being collected by the government. Um, the IRS does not deal with that. It's not certified as delinquent to the state. And then some of these other things. If you're on an installment agreement, you're fine. If you're on an offer and compromise and paying it over time. So FBAR penalties do not suspend your passport. If you're in a settlement agreement already with the Department of Justice. Now that's rare. Just recently set one up though, working with the DOJ. But again, if you've gotten to the level of you're dealing with the DOJ, you've listened to some very bad advice from some shady attorneys to get to that point. In most cases have no business being there. So again, if you are in the CDP process, if you're appealing a case, if you're in the collection due process, those won't be sent, but it could already be sent, and that's an issue. So, and also debt suspended for innocent spouse relief. Now, if you have a currently non-collectible or hardship status on your case, you don't have to worry about your debt being sent to collections. If you have a pending installment agreement or an offer and compromise that protects your account, if you have filed identity theft, if you've been a victim of identity theft and you filed that with the IRS, they won't submit that. If you're in bankruptcy, if you're in a federally declared disaster area, or if you have an accepted adjustment that will pay your debt in full. Basically, you just need some kind of resolution on your case. You just need to be able to engage with them, set up some kind of resolution. Any resolution will do, and it will prevent the suspension of your license or your passport. So again, that's a kind of a lengthy list here, but the important thing is engage with the IRS, either you personally or with a professional. And as long as you're moving your case forward and setting up a resolution, you should be protected. What you don't want to be, you don't want to be in a situation where you're in collections, things are not moving forward, you're waiting, and this can be on the tax professional or it can be on the taxpayer that isn't getting their documents, isn't getting their tax returns filed. So being on top of this is going to really help protect you and your ability to travel. So we're running out of time. We're going to have to address this after the break, but we're going to come right back and really dive into how it works and what does it look like and the best ways to address this. What do you need to know to get your passport revocation released or suspension released? Welcome back, everybody. Time just seems to fly when you're having fun. So again, we're getting into the details here of passport revocations and suspensions. Number one way, we're getting right into how it works, but before we dive into that, how do you prevent it from happening in the first place? When you get an IRS notice, don't ignore it. When you have an issue, deal with it ahead of time. And again, I've had cases in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, even millions of dollars, where the individual came back and said, "Oh, well, you didn't do that much with collections." I'm like, because you have no idea how bad it could have been. That's ironically some of the best work we do is when we get in early, we deal with the issue, we make the revenue officer happy, we avoid all the nasty mess. And actually helps when the revenue officer comes in and says, "Well, I can do A, B, C, D, and E and turn your life upside down." And we go and say, "Here, we're prepared, we're ready, here we go." But it helps if the revenue officer actually breathes a little bit of fire so that people understand how bad it can be and what we're actually helping them from. So if you go in and you have a stress-free case, no bank levies, no wage garnishments, no suspension of passports, that is ideal. That's what we want. That's what we're working for. We want to make this as easy as possible for the taxpayers. And the easiest way to do that is to get in there early before you start getting notices and nasty letters. Excuse me. So, especially with passport revocations, as we mentioned earlier, if you owe more than $62,000, it can happen. Best way to prevent that is deal with it early. Get into a resolution, be it an installment agreement, hardship status or CNC status, or an offer and compromise. Or you can deal with it through some, there's a few other ways to deal with it. If it is tax fraud or identity theft, you can report it as fraud. Bankruptcy will help take care of it. And, or you can pay the debt in full, or if there's an adjustment that pays it in full. So the government is like an octopus. It's got tentacles all over the place, but without the central brain. So it's meant to be funny. But so you have these different departments operating, and they do not interact very well. So if you have, each tentacle is doing its own thing, accomplishing what is going on, but there's no central brain that communicates information very well at all. So first of all, before you can have your passport suspended, you're going to get hit by a CP 508C notice. And I have a sample that we're going to share with you real quick. This is exactly what it looks like. Again, this is just general, but you have your tax ID from the IRS, taxpayer name, address, and then right at the top it says notice of certification of a seriously delinquent federal tax debt to the State Department. Now, this is supposed to be of last resort. If you notice, the amount here is over $62,000. Then you have additional penalties and interest. Again, this is just the language you're going to see, different tax returns, not 1040, 941s if you're personally liable. And again, it's just form language, the rest of it. But really need to pay attention to the top here. This is what's called the headline or the type of letter. So again, it has the notice number here, but notice of certification of your seriously delinquent federal tax debt to the State Department. And ironically, they don't say anything about passports here, but the IRS computers have flagged your case as seriously delinquent when you get this letter. And what happens is that's when the IRS communicates to the State Department, and it takes a while for their computers to sync up. So once that status is changed in the IRS computers, it takes a while for that information to be communicated over the State Department, and then for your passport to be revoked. So really, when this happens, you do have a chance to stop it, but you've got to get in there quickly. And ironically, for larger cases, they just don't move that fast. They don't react that fast. So the ironic thing, you have to get on this quickly. If you have travel plans, again, movers, there's no guarantees here because it can take the IRS a long time. And if you don't have all your tax returns in, or if you have issues going on with your case that make it more difficult, it can take months or years to set up even a basic installment agreement with the IRS. It all depends on your situation. So once you get that letter, that's your notice that it's been sent out and that the State Department has that. So in reverse, once you fix a situation with the IRS or you set up a resolution, it takes the same 45 to 90 days for them to communicate, for the IRS to change their status, and for that to be communicated over to the State Department to change that status. And then once that happens, after that, you can go and get your passport reissued, unsuspended, whatever you need to do. And again, you can enter a payment plan or other resolution, which it doesn't put in here. You can pay off the debt or resolve any errors in their certification process. So if there was an issue, you can bring that up with them and get that addressed. Um, the IRS does not move quickly, which really this is the frustrating part is that if you have eminent travel plans, they try to move quickly. It's just because they say they're going to move quickly doesn't mean it actually happens. So if you have travel plans in the next 45 days where you need to travel, you can try for an expedited reversal of a certification to the State Department. You must have an open passport application or renewal request. So if your license was suspended, you must have an open process. They give you 90 days to fix this. But you don't qualify for the expedited process unless there's only 45 days left before you travel. So when expedited, the IRS can shorten the 30 days processing time to 14 to 21 days. That doesn't help too much, but it can. But again, this is my point here is they have this expedited process. It is hard to qualify for this, and your travel time has to line up with the IRS processing this quicker, and you have to get in the right hands, and you have to have the following to even qualify for this program. You have to have proof of travel, flight itinerary, hotel reservation, cruise ticket, international car insurance, or other documents showing location, the name of the traveler, and the approximate date of travel. And it has to be time sensitive for this trip that you've already planned and paid for. So the reason for this is a lot of people get surprised. Happens all the time where they plan a trip and the first time they realize that, oops, there's a problem is when they go to the airport or they will go to get on the cruise ship and they go run their passport and oops, passport is suspended. So if that's happened, you have to have a copy of the letter from the State Department denying the taxpayer's application. So you have to apply, you have to have that denial, you have 90 days to fix it, or you have to start from scratch again. So the tax debt is fully satisfied, it becomes legally unenforceable, it expires. To reverse the certification, or it's no longer seriously delinquent, you paid under $62,000, or you set it up in a resolution, or for some reason they made a mistake. This is don't hang your hat on this. This is rare because they take so long to do it. And when they say they will make this reversal within 30 days, don't hold your breath for that. Don't plan on, hey, I'm just gonna, get in there in 45 days. The IRS does not act that quickly. They're very, very difficult to even get a hold of in the first place, and to get a hold of someone that's competent makes it a lot more difficult. So it's not as easy as you might think. So if you think there's an issue, if you have tax debt, if you do have a passport revocation or suspension, reach out to us or another tax professional as soon as possible. So a referral to revoke a passport, though, can happen if you set up an installment agreement, you promise to pay, and fail to do so. So this is a very common thing where someone sets up an installment agreement just to get what they want, and that's a great way to get your passport revoked, and it's a lot harder to set it up again the second time. And especially if you have offshore activities or funds that you have that you're not using to pay down your debt, it could be a bigger problem. So don't try to play games with them. It just can make the process longer, more involved, and make the IRS a lot less likely to expedite anything for you. There is judicial review, so you can take this to court to try to expedite this. Not cheap, not easy. The best thing is to get a hold of it. If I sound like a broken record, it's because I am again, it's the same things over and over again. You have to make sure that you're on top of it to prevent all these. And when you're filing an offer and compromise or an installment agreement, make sure you do something that works for you, because with same thing with an installment agreement. If you set up an installment agreement that you can't afford to pay, and it's just going to fall apart. You're just kicking the problem down the road a little bit. If you're going to do an offer and compromise, I mean, they're amazing. They do a lot for you, but you have to make sure, I would highly recommend you make sure that you qualify, that if you don't have your taxes filed, if you're not current on estimated tax payments, you file the offer, and with a month or two, they're going to kick it back to you. They're really good at kicking offers out, whether or not they should. So again, here are some of the phone numbers to call if there has been an error, you believe there has been an error, the tax amount, or believe the certification was made in error, or if you've paid the debt, you have to send proof to the address on the notice that you've just paid it off. So again, if you recently filed your return and you're expected a refund, if the refund is enough to pay the debt, they will consider the amount fully paid once the return and refund are processed. So not when you file it, but when they're processed. So again, that's where you can, once it shows in the IRS system, and a payment takes time to post. That's the thing. Everything you do with the IRS takes time. And so it usually takes a couple of weeks for a payment to post. Once that posts, the payment is processed and then reflected on your tax account, then you can take that to the State Department. So again, if you need a U.S. passport to keep your jobs, tough luck. Same things apply. They must fully pay the balance or make alternative payment arrangements to have the certification reversed. Nothing special. So no special help if it's going to affect your job. And I get that all the time. People say, look, I have to travel for work. I have to do this. I have to have these meetings. That's lovely. The IRS doesn't care. So best thing to do, call early, get your advice early. And I'm going to stop sharing that. Reach out to a tax professional, get good advice. If you're getting letters and you're not sure what they say or what they mean, again, this is all going to be linked to the show on our YouTube channel later, that you can access through our website, guardiantaxlaw.com. And we also do a free letter review. So you can always call us, send us a letter that you got from the IRS, the state, or someone else claiming to be representing on taxes. We can spot frauds like that very quickly. And we've seen so many, and our clients get a lot of fraudulent things, or other companies trying to scare them into hiring them. So again, we do a free document review. You can just give us a call at 520-485-7371, or you can send us an email at info@guardiantaxlaw.com, or for more information, you can always go to our website at guardiantaxlaw.com. So if time is of the essence, usually people end up having to cancel their travel plans. So again, this is not something to wait on. Getting the IRS to expedite things is harder than ever. And so again, you do have the expedited process. It's hard to qualify. It's hard to get the IRS to move quickly enough. And a lot of times we're just waiting on the IRS. If you have all your tax returns filed, if you're paying all your estimated tax payments, if you have everything else to put together, yeah, it is very possible. Yes, it is possible we can go in there and set up a resolution quickly in a very short amount of time. Does that usually happen? No. That is a very uncommon situation. There's usually something that happens, some kind of delay. And a lot of time the delay is on the IRS end. We can go in there, do the negotiation, set things up, and then we don't hear back from them for a couple of weeks. We follow up with them. Something happened. The manager took a break, just didn't even do it. So we have to redo the negotiation. This is why we have to verify everything we do at the IRS. So go in with your eyes open. If you get this notice, call us early before you make travel plans. And if travel plans happen, you might need to put those on ice and get this figured out first. So again, 520-485-7371. Call us for some free advice before you step in a bear trap or spend a bunch of money on a trip. That unfortunately might not happen. So have a great day, and we'll see you tomorrow.